Hello, welcome again to the YouTube series Papa Lee and the Aliens. I'm your host and narrator, Henry Lee Chenault, aka Mystery Answer Man, aka Papa Lee. Today's episode is Atlantis. This is one of my most favorite episodes in the book of answers. This subject's been kicked around so many times by so many writers. My answers on Atlantis are unique and have never been revealed before. It's the only one that's of its kind, so be sure and watch closely and compare it to the others. You can judge for yourself their validity. Before we get started, I need to set the stage to find out where everybody is. To begin with, I want to explain the fact that were two Atlantises. Atlantis was nothing more than the name of the mining colony that the sons of God set up both in Pangaea and also in the Black Sea region around 5000 BC. If you go back to the beginnings, I think it was in episode 4 or 5 anyway, we talked about the alien base on the continent of Pangaea. It was on the equator. Well, in 1862, Ignatius, I forget what his name is, Donnelly, had a vision and from Plato's writings decided that Atlantis was a large island out here in the Atlantic, and that these were the other areas where the Atlantean civilization existed. Well, I looked at that, and then I got to thinking. I said, well, you know what? If you just pushed all this back together, like this right here, to where you had Pangaea, this island would actually be all of those little islands that I talked about in the Caribbean area. So I really feel like he had a vision, somehow saw this, and I think that's the reason that he actually drew this map and thought that that was the first Atlantis. And I agree with him. It's just the fact that it wasn't there, it was all squished in together. And you can see that all of this area here included the Black Sea region, and that was in North America also. And that's what the Sons of God have always claimed. They claimed North America and Asia Minor, or the Turkey or the Black Sea region. So anyway, that was the first Atlantis, the alien base here. And what we're talking about today is the second Atlantis. So we're going to get ahead and get started on that. The time is about 5000 BC. Adam's descendants, the first 10 patriarchs, have been living in the valley along the South Black Sea coast. Adam's son Cain, who also lived to be nearly 1,000 years old, had started his own clan in Mesopotamia, present-day Iraq. He has not been in God's presence. His offspring would become the Sumerians. The Sumerians will be favored by the sons of God. There are still lots of non-spirit-filled Homo sapiens around. Cro-Magnon is still roaming the globe looking for someone to eat. God's presence remains in the Black Sea region with Adam's descendants. The sons of God had established a new mining colony in that region around 5000 BC. This new colony would be the second Atlantis. The basis of my Atlantean belief is found in Genesis 6, 1 through 4. And it came to pass, when men began to multiply upon the face of the earth, and daughters were born unto them, that the sons of God saw the daughters of men, that they were fair, and they took them wives of all they chose. And the Lord said, My spirit shall not always strive with man, for that he also is flesh, yet his days shall be 120 years. There were giants in those days, and also after that, when the sons of God came into the daughters of men, and they bore children to them. The same became mighty men which were of old, men of renown. Okay, so what was the purpose of the second Atlantis? The purpose of Atlantis was the same as the Garden of Eden, to provide food for the sons of God. The sons of God wanted to establish territorial claims to the mining rights in the present-day Middle East. They had moved their base camp from Göbekli Tepe to a safer location on the plains of what would become the Sea of Azov. They still needed protection. Remember that there were still giants, Cro-Magnon cannibals. So how did they get protection? Simple. They surrounded the second Atlantis with water like the first Atlantis had 65 million years ago. If you remember, I told you that they were in an extinct volcano. They had a caldera there where there's actually a ring of water around the central portion. Well, this is actually a volcano called Toba in Indonesia, and it's a very large volcano. But anyway, this is what their island would have looked like with the first Atlantis. So thinking upon that, then they decided that their second Atlantis, they would make it with a ring of water around it also. So here are some facts to remember when studying this episode. The time is around 5000 BC. The Sons of God mining colony was started. For 2,000 years, the climate had become wetter and warmer. The mini ice age in Europe had ended. The level of the Black Sea was over 300 feet lower than its neighbor, the Mediterranean Sea. The Sea of Azov was dry and had not been formed yet. There was an alluvial plain there, and with several rivers running through it. The level of the Azov plain was 300 feet lower than the present-day level of the Azov seafloor. Silting in over the last 5,000 years has caused the Azov seafloor to rise. The Azov Sea would only need to collect about 3/4 of an inch of silt each year to reach the present-day seafloor level. The Azov Sea is only 3 feet deep in some places. The greatest depth of the Azov Sea today is 46 feet. The present-day depth of the Strait of Kerch that flows between the Black Sea and the Sea of Azov is 48 feet. Because these depths are so close to being equal, I feel that the Strait of Kerch and a small body of water or sea in the Azov plain was present around 5000 BC with an approximate depth of 50 feet. The Strait of Kerch is less than 3 miles wide and was located on the was the location of the Pillars of Hercules. The pillars were beacons for ships to enter the harbor of Atlantis. The Mediterranean region did not develop until after the Great Flood around 3000 BC. Sails for ships had not even been invented yet. So how was Atlantis built? Before I go there, I'm going to go ahead and show you some illustrations. Need to show you where the Sea of Azov is. Okay. This is the Black Sea region. This is Turkey. Right in this region right here is where the Irsis Dagi volcano is, and the Henson Dagi, the Garden of Eden. Adam and Eve went up this way down the river, went up here to Samson in Sinope. There's an underwater mountain range right here. This is where all the 10 patriarchs lived, was in this valley, right here in this valley. The Sea of Azov is right up here. Okay, the sea was not present then. This Black Sea level was 300 feet lower. I'm going to show you over here. If you look here, this is the level of the Atlantic Sea and the Black Sea. The level of the Mediterranean Sea was 300 feet higher. So we're going to go back over here. This was all an alluvial plain. In other words, it was very fertile land. There were 2 rivers that actually ran into it. One of them was called the Kuban, and one of them was called the Don. The Don was the main one. But that's where the second Atlantis is going to be located, is right here in this region. This right here is the Strait of Kerch. The Strait of Kerch is an opening from the Black Sea into the Sea of Azov. I said that this strait here, this little band of water, was about 50 feet deep, and there was another area on the inside of this alluvial plain, a little sea area where the port was, that was also 50 feet deep. So, how was Atlantis built? Atlantis was located on the alluvial plain of the not yet formed Azov Sea. The plain was 330 miles long and 110 miles wide. The plain was surrounded by a canal to collect water from the rivers, the Dan and the Reuben. This canal created the island of Atlantis. The climate of Atlantis was such that 2 harvests were possible in a year. The island formed by the canal provided all kinds of fruits and grains. Elephants roamed the island. The prehistoric remains of dwarf elephants have been found on many Mediterranean islands. The Telos dwarf elephants became extinct around 5000 BC, or 5,000 years ago, which was at the time of the Great Flood. This is one fact about Atlantis that is never addressed by the Atlantean theorists. Every theories that I go to, they never say anything about the elephants. But that was one of the things that was very distinct. And Atlantis has to be in some place, in some area where elephants are common. So, to the north of the island was the Ukraine Mountains, where non-spirit-filled Homo sapiens lived. In the center of the island was a central hill. The hill was formed from the excavation of the soil from the canals that were dug. In the center of the hill was a temple. I'm going to show you that real quick. Again, I show you the Black Sea here, the Strait of Kerch. This is the Atlantean Sea. This is the alluvial plain, which is very fertile. This is the 1,100-mile canal that went all the way around it. It was formed from the rivers of these, the Kuban and the Don. That's how they formed the canal around it. That was to protect them. The central island, we said here, if you can see this, it's kind of dark and kind of hard to see. This was a central hill that was formed from digging up all of these dirt from all these canals anyway. And in the center of this hill, right here, is where the spaceship was. The Sons of God spaceship was here in the bottom of it. Had a gold dome over it to keep the dirt out, and on top of it was a temple. And this temple was actually the entrance to the spaceship. The spaceship was to provide electricity, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. The hill was 5.5 miles from the sea. Here's the Atlantean Sea, right here and right here. It was 5.5 miles to this central hill. A canal from the sea connected the hill to the port of Atlantis. The canal was 300 feet wide and 100 feet deep. Remember I said that the port was only 50 feet deep. All of the canals were dug by removing 50 feet of soil to construct 50-foot levees on each side of the canal. This would make the canals 100 feet deep. The depth of the water was only 50 feet deep. The levees would provide protection from flooding of the rivers and would also facilitate irrigation of the crops on the island. Around the central hill were 3 concentric rings of land separated by water canals. The distance from the central hill to the first ring was 600 feet. The canal itself was 600 feet wide and was surrounded on both sides by walls covered with auriculum. The temple of the hill was also made of auriculum. Auriculum has no longer been found. It was extremely rare and the mines were exhausted. Today this mineral is called iridium and is found in the deep mantle of the earth. Auriculum was obtained by smelting copper with the addition of what they call chlamydia. It's a kind of earth that was formed on the shores of the Black Sea. This chlamydia was the 6-inch layer of iridium left from the antimatter matter bomb blast that destroyed the first Atlantis. In other parts of the world, chlamydia is referred to as the KT boundary in sedimentary rocks. The middle ring of land and water were each 1,200 feet wide. I'm going to go ahead and show you this right now. This one here, remember we said was 600 feet wide, and the water was 600 feet wide. This next one is going to be, actually it's right here, you can't see it. And the next one is going to be 1,200 feet. And it's going to be 1,200 feet wide, the water is. The land and the water both were 1,200 feet wide. The first one was both 600 feet wide. The outermost ring of land and water was each 1,800 feet wide. So we have 3 circles with land and water. The first ring is in land and water is 600 feet each. The second one is 1,200 feet each, and the third one is 1,800 feet each. The walls of the first one were lined with auriculum. The walls of the second one were lined with tin, and the walls of the third canal was lined with brass. The furthermost wall was a distance of 30,000 feet or 5.5 miles, making the total diameter of Atlantis 11 miles wide. On the alluvial plain itself, a ditch 100 feet wide and 100 feet deep was dug, completely enclosing the entire settlement of Atlantis. This ditch was 1,100 miles long. I showed you that a little while ago. This is the ditch that goes all the way around it. This is the one that's going to keep most of the Cro-Magnons out, and also anybody that's not wanted. That's what actually made the island. Bridges 100 feet wide were constructed across the rings of water to connect the rings of land. So over here you had bridges that actually crossed these areas, and there was actually towers or gates on each end of those. There were guards at each end. In short, there was a defense against disgruntled workers or slaves and hungry, cannibalistic Cro-Magnons. The Sons of God spaceship was located inside the hill in the center of Atlantis. A gold dome covered the spaceship to protect it from the soil of the hill. The temple on top of the hill provided an entrance to the spaceship. The spaceship would provide electrical energy to the walls of the 3 canals. The auriculum wall, composed of an alloy of copper and iridium, would carry a positive current. The tin wall would carry a negative current. The brass wall would serve as a ground wire. The bridges would act as terminals. The electric current provided by the spaceship would induce an electric current in the water to allow electrolysis of the gold, silver, and copper from the rivers flowing through the rings. By increasing the voltage of the electricity current, the canals would also become an electric fence, which would protect against swimming invaders. So all in all, Atlantis was not a temporary post by any means. It was a well-designed city with a good infrastructure and was self-maintained. However, this is not the shining metropolis that all of the experts would have you to believe. The homes and buildings occupied by the inhabitants were all made of bricks from mud and straw. They would be the same color as the rich alluvial soil. The villagers were farmers and craftsmen that fed the populace and the sons of God. Only the temple on the hill was a shining, ornate facility. In other words, Atlantis would look like any ordinary county seat town in rural America with its pretty little courthouse located in the center of the town. So what caused the demise and the destruction of Atlantis? What is the Atlantean connection between God and the Bible? Let us again read Genesis 6, 1 through 6. And it came to pass, when men began to multiply on the face of the earth, and the daughters were born unto them, that the sons of God saw the daughters of men that they were fair, and they took them wives of all that they chose. The kingdom of Urartu, sometimes called Ararat, is on the southeast coast of the Black Sea. It was home to 3 tribal groups. One of these tribal groups were called the Nairi, meaning that they had fair hair and eyes. And the Lord said, My spirit will not always strive with man, for that he also is flesh. Yet his days shall be 120 years old. There were giants in the earth in those days, and also after that. Cro-Magnon was present in the area, but he would survive the great flood. In other words, it said he was also after that. The Nephilim that you read about in Enoch was created by the sons of God to combat the Cro-Magnon. They would be destroyed. They would be destroyed in the flood. When the sons of, quoting again, when the sons of God came in unto the daughters of men, and they bare children unto them, the same became mighty men which were of old, men of renown. And God saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every imagination of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. And it repented the Lord that he had made man on earth, and it grieved him in his heart. Here's a special note. The sons of God did not have sex with their wives, the fair-haired maidens. Remember, the sons of God reproduce, they're reptiles, and they reproduce by parthenogenesis. They possess a reptilian cloaca, kind of like a chicken. They do not have compatible mammalian male genitalia. Their wives became pregnant by artificial insemination. It appears that human nature had failed at another experiment. The sons of God, by taking the Homo sapien women as wives, created an atmosphere of hatred and animosity within the men of that region. The Atlantean civilization had forgotten the importance of their spiritual presence. The men would become rebellious, would begin to disrespect other women. Sexual perversion, sodomy, and the breakdown of the family unit occurred. In other words, Atlantis had become a precursor to Sodom and Gomorrah, which would later raise their ugly heads. The Atlantean civilization would have to be destroyed in the region of the valley of the first 10 patriarchs. The Atlantean civilization would have to be destroyed. In the region of the valley of the first 10 patriarchs, there was one man who found favor with God, and that man was Noah. He and his family, along with their animals, would be saved from the flood that was coming to destroy Atlantis. You will find out more in the next episode. Before we leave, I need to cover 2 topics. The first is the existence of the creatures of mythology. When you read about the mythological creatures, you learn that a lot of the creatures were part snake and part dragon. Remember, the sons of God were an advanced reptilian species whose genetic makeup contained millions and millions of years of evolution. Their chromosomes number 23, the same as ours. Their chromosomes, like ours, contain lots of genes that are not used, producing offspring with the Homo sapiens, the fair-haired maidens, who also had reptilian genes in their genetic makeup from the hybrid Australopithecus. The malformations of the offspring then occurred. These creatures are the mythological creatures. They were difficult to control, and they posed a threat to the sons of God. They too would need to be destroyed. The second topic is the most important thing that came out of the second Atlantean project. Genesis 6:6. And they bare children unto them. The same became mighty men, which were of old, men of renown. The men of renown were spirit-filled human hybrids with advanced intelligence. Some of the individuals would have both right and left Sylvian fissures. They were to become the tall whites or the elders. The other men of renown only possessed a right Sylvian fissure. Stories would evolve of these men's great powers. They would be the gods in Greek mythology. After the Great Flood, these men of renown would disperse all over the world to spread knowledge about astronomy, mathematics, metallurgy, music, and agriculture. They were to help shape the new civilizations in Egypt, Greece, Europe, Mesopotamia, and as far east as China and India. Some would even make it to America, where pyramids would spring up. These men of renown and later their offspring would become priests in the temples, shamans in villages, kahunas, witch doctors, medicine men, healers, and educators. Remember that writing did not develop in Samaria until after the Great Flood. Until then, stories of the men of renown would be told and orally passed down to later generations. The men of renown, as you will find in the second book, More Answers, were the most important things to come out of the Great Flood. As you will see in the next episode, Noah's Great Flood, another important event was to save the lineage of Adam from extinction. Well, there you have it. How Atlantis was involved in the God-alien-man connection. You've never heard it before like this. Hope to see you next episode. Good night. Papa Lee signing off. The Lord is my shepherd. Bye.